Greetings, family. Once again, we are back here. We got with us a couple very special guests. First off, I want to bring in my co-host and good brethren by the name of Ross E. Eric L. Greetings, Ross. Otra vez.
Tanestilan.
Yes,
Greetings.
Greetings. And our special guest on tonight's show, we got this brethren, goes by the name of Priest Alex, or Alex Moore-Minott, a very sacred Myal priest from a place called Jamaica, one of the most sacred places on planet Earth. A place, I think very special in the hearts of everybody here at Jah Works Radio, because we honor reggae music, and within that tradition goes back to the roots of Jamaica. So we got a brethren who very well educated in the history of Jamaica, tradition, cultural tradition, indigenous tradition, and honored tonight to welcome you, Priest Alex.
Peace and love. As my indigenous Lokona Arawak Taino ancestors would have said, Alekoha. As my Congo ancestors would say, Yenge. I bid you peace and love.
Yes,
thank you for having me. It is an honor.
Thank you so much as well. Peace and love. So, Priest Alex, let's just start. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have seen you around. You've been on some other shows, but I bet there's many who have not. And so, if you don't mind, just doing a quick introduction, who you are, where you come from, and maybe just a little bit about this Myal culture, because a lot of people don't know anything about Myal culture. I didn't know much about it until I really encountered a lot of your work. So please, I'll give you the microphone to forward.
Thank you, my brother. Well, I am, as stated before, I am a priest of the Myal tradition. I do consider myself still a young man at the age of 34, but my calling, my passion is the spirituality of Jamaica, the history of Jamaica, the culture of Jamaica. And when I say the culture of Jamaica, it may confuse some people, because people consider that Jamaican culture is simply as is portrayed or perceived, and that is cut and clear just African culture or something else that Europeans brought along. And when we say colonizing Europeans, but that really simplifies the depth of culture that is here and what our culture actually is. So it has been pretty much my life's work to study every little minute piece of Jamaican tradition and culture that I can put my hands on, because Jamaicans have been taught not to see themselves as a distinct people. However, how do you explain a nation of such a small size having such universal appeal? I can't put my finger on any other nation, whether in the Caribbean or any other part of the world, that would be considered a small island developing state that is considered a cultural superpower in the way that Jamaica is. It is very touching to see even you, my brother, having so much passion for the reggae music, because at the end of this exercise, you should really know what reggae really is, where it really comes from, and the side of it that is not explored by the masses. So my mission as a priest, as a young priest, in carrying on the work of my spiritual house, is to call our people back to the tradition and to remind them of self and who they are. We are not here to evangelize. I don't evangelize. As my high priest instructs me, you should embody, not evangelize. because people should see your works and see what you represent and see you practicing what you may preach and be attracted by that. It shouldn't be a situation where you have to be running people down. That means that there's an issue with your doctrine or you're not living it. So you should be a living example, an embodiment. And every day that is what I do my best to strive towards. There's no way that I shouldn't feel proud about being a son of the soil that has nurtured so many greats. I don't think that there's anywhere in the world you can go and not hear about Bob Marley, you know, Usain Bolt, all of these people who everybody is familiar with, Marcus Garvey, etc. But what are those people's roots? What were the doctrines, or what was the doctrine that informed their lifestyle and how they came to be what they are? That's Myal. And Myal is essentially the spiritual intersection of the African people who came here and the original people, the First Nations people of this land. Quickly, those people found common ground during colonization. One set were defending their land, and that would have been the people of this land, and the other set, the Africans, were defending their personal sovereignty because they had already been taken from their land, and they didn't know if they would ever be able to return. So fortunate for them that there were people here of this land that stood up and who had such a similar spiritual culture that it was easy for them to become a part of this nation here. And this is the reason why there is no African culture that can truly claim Jamaica, right? No matter what anyone says, they can't actually show a culture that is definitively Jamaican. But yet Jamaican culture has had such a profound effect on Africa. You would think that it would be the other way around. It was Jamaican culture that inspired liberation struggle in Africa, right? It was Cuban culture, which is our sister nation, right? Cuba. It was also Cuban culture that liberated Africa. And this is just the bottom line. And so how could I be a part of such a culture and not be proud of it? Right? We see Germans, we see Italians, we see Japanese people who don't speak a bit of coherent English, singing along with Vibes Cartel, singing along with Movado, and all of these things. There's something different here. And so, as you rightfully said, Jamaica is one of the most sacred spots on earth. But so my work personally is to answer the question that many people don't even know that they have. What is the spiritual culture that springs from such a sacred space, right? So people assume that it's Rastafari, but without disrespecting Rastas. Their doctrine is very much, their spiritual doctrine is very much Abrahamic. They're influenced by the Bible. Their embodiment of the perfect man. He himself was a Christian, and he proclaimed this to them when he came to Jamaica. But Rasta also is a shoot, is a branch off of a much older and a much, in many ways, more profound tree. and that is Myal. So Myal is the spirituality, is the religion of Jamaica, and it finds partners, it finds likeness in many other Caribbean countries, Haiti, Cuba, Suriname, Trinidad. We all have that sort of spiritual tradition where when the Africans came, they met upon the first peoples of each of those lands. So that has always tied us together. It is the reason why Jamaicans went to Haiti to aid in the revolution. It's why Jamaicans went to Cuba to aid in the Spanish-American War of Liberation of Cuba. Many people don't know about that 1898, right? It is the reason why a Jamaican a Jamaican priest went to Suriname. People don't know about that either, and helped two Maroon nations in Suriname to put an end to the war with the Dutch and to draft up a final treaty document that recognized them as a separate nation. People don't know this, right? And so it is my personal mission to reveal these things to the world so that they will have the proper due respect that they should be giving to Jamaican ancestors and Jamaican spiritual culture. You mentioned reggae music. Well, because Myal is the origination point for Rastafari, reggae that sprang from Rastafari is also coming directly from Myal. And it came to me today. I was listening to one of the recordings from the Kumina, the ceremony that I had last weekend. And it hit me. I don't remember if it's a Flower Gun song. Who sings that song? Gangali. Who's that again?
Yeah, I know what you're talking. Ross, you know who's the singer on that one?
Tell me how Gangali.
Louis Culture.
Louis Culture.
Yeah.
Yes, Louis Culture. I think there's another song that he sings. It kind of passed through my memory and I didn't get to write it down. But there is another song. It will come back to me and I will share it with you, my brother. That it is sung with the same cadence, the same beat, the same vibration as a style of Kumina playing. And it hit me that most of the great artists that you saw coming out of the roots reggae era, most of them were from places that Myal was really prevalent, like whether in the East, St. Mary, Portland, St. Thomas, right? Or over in the West in St. Elizabeth, those places. You check it out. These places were hotspots for real reggae music, real roots reggae music that has had a lasting and profound impact on the world. And you recognize that these guys, when they were youths, they would have grown up in culture yards, in barnyards. Their grandparents were healers in the Myal tradition, etc. And so they got used to hearing this music, right? The revival music, the Kumina, right? The Chromanti from the Maroons, all of that. This is the beat. This is that heartbeat sound that eventually became the one drop beat, the one drop rhythm, which morphed into everything that we now hold dear in Jamaican music. So when people come to Jamaica and say, boy, it's such a spiritual atmosphere, we can draw a straight line from Jamaican traditional spirituality and religion to reggae, even to dancehall, because these are this is music of resistance, and the first line of resistance to oppression, colonization, and slavery was Myal. That was the guiding force, the galvanizing force. I hope that was a good
man. That was a great introduction. There's so much that a lot of people don't know about, and I give thanks for informing I on this. Even I've heard this before, but I think a lot of people don't know, and I think it's held back. This information's held back, that the unifying of the African culture with the Arawak, or what is it, Taino? Taino, yeah, culture that was in Jamaica, prior to to the Africans coming over. I mean, that alone, that's like paradigm shifting. That's something that they don't teach that in school.
No.
And the same thing happened here in North America.
Exactly. Very same thing. If you check out soul music, blues, all that, you're going to find that those main men, those main blues players, those main soul singers, you check them out, these were people whose grandparents were Cherokee, this and that. And the fact of the matter is that we have been taught to discredit the indigenous American aspect because colonizers wanted to say that they have ultimate claim over the land. That's all it is. If it was somewhere else where that paradigm creation wasn't necessary, it wouldn't be a problem. It wouldn't be a problem at all. But the mere fact that they had to cement and stamp their authority, they had to say that the land was empty when they came. They had to say that the Spanish, in the case of Jamaica especially, that the Spanish had obliterated all indigenous people. And so when we took it from the Spanish by war, they had no legal leeway to turn around and say, it is our land, because they took it by war and they destroyed all of the people who were here that have the rightful claim. But that again was not true. Those people were pushed to the margins of society. And the fact of the matter is that even reggae music has always, the true reggae music have always been on the margins of society, because it is the music of the people, of the soil, of the earth, right? And that offends the colonizer, always does, because anything that is going to give our people a thought that they should rise up and take what is rightfully theirs is dangerous for the establishment that the colonizer has been fighting so hard to create.
Yeah. I like what you brought up too earlier about like Jamaican culture having this influence. It's a small island in the Caribbean, a small population, and you travel anywhere in the world and they know Jamaica. It's the Jamaican culture. And so I like that you're pinpointing that magic that comes from that place, that culture, that deep culture. My wife's from Peru. I can go down to Peru. There's nobody who doesn't know Bob Marley, and even a lot of the newer artists, too, are huge there.
Yes.
And
yes.
Just you see a picture of Bob Marley, that means rebel. Right there. That's
yes.
in people's minds. It's like, that's okay. That's that. And so that's a good call about the margin of society. That's right. That's spot on right there.
And as you mentioned Peru, I'm sure that Peruvian people wouldn't know this, but there is I honestly haven't heard it anywhere else as yet, but I know that if my family lineage is connected to Peru, and that is because my my mother's father's side, they had the tradition of raising and eating guinea pigs, kui,
Cool. Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
And that
Ah,
exists nowhere else because kui are only from Peru,
right.
right?
Right.
They're literally indigenous to nowhere else. And so
That's
no
right.
one else eats them. And so I knew right away that when I started to do the research, and it, I just thought it like a strange thing that my grandfather was doing at the time. And then with the advent of YouTube and YouTube having all of these documentaries, I'm like, hold on, there's a whole culture of people who eat this thing. And then the way that they roast it and thing, I thought back to what my grandfather said. They used to put the key lime in the mouth of the kui and roast it on the spit. And I'm like, wait, hold on. It's clear that it was that really pushed me to dig deeper into what the hell is Jamaica? You know, what
Wow.
is Jamaican culture? There's something that we're not getting, that we're missing. And so, I am
Yeah.
constantly striving to find more of that something, you
Mm.
know.
Well, Ra. All right. So a couple things. Number one, I got to ask you: you're saying cooey? Is that how?
Mhm.
Like, is this how you learned the word from your ancestor, from your grandfather? Was it cooey? Is that,
Well,
or
well,
was it?
no. I eventually found out that that's what
Okay,
they called it. I mean,
got you.
he just said guinea
Guinea
pig,
pig. Yeah,
right?
yeah. Right, right.
And so at the time, it really meant nothing to me because I'm like, oh, guinea pig is this thing. But then I realized that this is a distinct cultural marker of one set of people in the world. So that was
Very
when I was like,
distinct.
okay,
All right.
something's up there.
So Ross, correct me if I'm wrong. I would say this more your expertise, but like it's documented people traveling from Africa to Peru, right? Or from Africa, at
Uh-huh.
least from Africa to Central America and further
Brazil.
north in South America, and that culture has spread. I mean, that's like a root culture right there.
All over, my brother. Like he said, Suriname, all over, man. All over the islands, Barbados, everywhere. I mean, we everywhere. We everywhere. And I think it's a missing. It's just like this is normal, man. It's a natural path. It's never preordained. We have an ordained minister here, a priest, a high priest, and we walking on, we floating, D-Ro, we floating, man. Peru, we know how special Jerusalem is, you know what I mean?
Jerusalem,
That's the real
yes,
Jerusalem right there.
that's right.
And so to having this meeting, talking with this brethren about this foundation knowledge that's not, I just want to hear him. I just want to listen, man. I'm a student right now. Please continue, please.
Yeah. So, Priest Alex, we started talking about Myal culture.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a huge controversy over obeah within Jamaica culture, and it extends way beyond Jamaica to Haiti, and I mean, of course,
Yeah.
it's different names, but and up here too, people know about it. Can you explain the relationship between obeah and Myal, and
Mm-hmm.
how how did it become so controversial? At what point, and how did that happen?
So for example, scholars will tell you that obeah, right, is coming from Igbo culture, and I do acknowledge the fact that Igbo people from Africa, did influence or bring their spirituality in some ways to Jamaica. But obeah or dibia, as it is in Nigeria, as it present day Nigeria, Igbo land, is different. So in Jamaica, it is not in and of itself a spiritual system. What is called obeah is the individual practice of a priest in terms of individual healing. So the blending of herbs, making tonics, all the other things that they would do, divination, etc., on an individual basis. So it's like how the Christian priests will have confession. Confession is its own thing, and they have the other sacrament of Holy Communion, etc. So these are just different aspects of Myal, which is the overall spiritual culture of Jamaica. So obeah is essentially, so in the most technical terms, if I'm doing individual spiritual work for you, for example, I'm a priest of Myal, but if I am doing individual spiritual work for you, that would be considered obeah, right? But that doesn't encompass the fullness of my duties. So essentially, Myal is for the community and for the entire nation of us as a people. So Myal and obeah got the bad rap that they got, not because of good Christian values amongst the British. No, it got the bad rap. They got the bad rap that they got because it sought to, or the spiritual culture sought to root out the colonizer influence in Jamaica. Because just as how Islam has 5 pillars of belief, or as their creed, we too have pillars, and one of the main pillars of Myal is freedom. That's the first pillar. And so there is no component within Myal that is sympathetic towards slavery in the way you can find passages within the Bible, within the Quran, etc., that are sympathetic towards slavery. Slavery is considered completely spiritually opposite and oppositional to a right and upright life in Myal. You should have the freedom to live and to give thanks and to celebrate with your people, etc. So it was the wars against our traditions. It was the wars against that we fought against colonization because of the war against our traditions that caused Myal to be ostracized and to be seen as something which was made illegal. There were obeah laws, as they call them, from about the 1730s or the 1740s, but they culminated in 1760 when ancestors rose up against the British establishment once again, and that in 1760 they created a law to prevent this, which at the time, so this is the precursor to the modern day Obeah Act, and at the time it was called an act for the prevention of the evils arising from irregular assemblies of slaves. Okay? And I want you to really think about the title of that law very carefully. and recognize that in the title of the law, the issue is not obeah, but irregular assemblies of slaves. What does that mean? That means that this is a law that is directly against the unity of our people. They did not want us to be unified. Even in Cuba, the reason that Santeria and Palomayombe and all of these are still so strong is because of the Cabildo system, the association system that was even recognized by their colonial Spanish government and allowed to have their own buildings and essentially become their own secret societies and things where they kept to themselves. That was fought by the British, right? And there was a war directly on that. And so this is what prevented the blossoming of this tradition in the way that Haiti, in the way that Cuba, you know, all these various places, where it was able to flourish, right? So this is the reason why people don't know, because of this law, right? This is the reason why people are so afraid of our traditions out here, the people themselves. And it is once again foreigners or diasporan Jamaicans that were born out there and weren't so pressured by their family members and things, who are now wanting to embrace this spiritual culture. And so, you know, as with anything, it's a challenge, but step by step, you know, we're working to overcome this law in any way that we can at this time to ensure that we can now pass on, not struggle to the next generation again, but a stepping stone, a chance for growth.
Yeah. So, and you had a ceremony this previous weekend that you mentioned a couple times. I believe that was in the parish of Portland, correct?
Yes. Yeah, man.
You mentioned it was a place called Ferry Hill.
Yes.
I found that's pretty interesting, that name too, right? I mean,
Yes.
but yeah, can you speak on the ceremony, because I'm thinking about,
Of course.
you know, this cultural renaissance which you're part of, and how does, you know, what is the ceremony? What was the ceremony, and how does it play into that?
So, you know, I entitled it My Spiritual Rebirth Day Coming On, and it's under the theme Unity with the Ancestors. And it is my spiritual rebirth day because it is the anniversary of my succession to my high priest. So there's a tradition within our spiritual house that the high priest does not wait until he's old and can't go anymore to choose a successor. So my high priest is not an old man. He's in his early 50s, but he selected me to be his successor 1 year ago on the 11th of July. And so it is a spiritual duty for me to honor the spirits of our house, which, when I say spirits of our house, is much like how the Catholics have patron saints. So the same situation, the spirits who are the patrons of our spiritual house that work with us to heal, to bring prosperity, etc. So it is a general feast for those spirits. However, as my unique position as a successor to the high priest of our spiritual house, that date means even more. And so because it was my first time, my first anniversary, my first duty, as it is called, it was also my crowning event. So the high priest was there to guide the proceedings. The proceedings, of course, were entirely my responsibility, right? Because I have to be able to show that I have the ability, the wherewithal to put on this very, very, very important event. And so he essentially was there to just guide me to the higher point of my initiation as a priest. So this was the capstone and the proverbial pyramid, essentially, where now I have proven myself as competent and capable to lead the spiritual house. So a new journey has essentially started for me, and because there's so many members of our spiritual house throughout Jamaica, I had to be able to get together as many of them as possible and, get them to start to see me essentially as the successor and as the leader, so there's that social aspect that has become another part of the journey. But that is why it's entitled Spiritual Rebirth Day coming up, because essentially it is my spiritual birthday that we were celebrating. And so it was a situation where the ancestors and other spirits were fed. The living were also fed because it's a feast. So nothing is for sale at this event, and it is strictly prohibited that anything be sold at the event. And it is my responsibility as a priest, as I guess you would say, operative priest, because I am, I guess you would call me the high priest elect of the spiritual house, because the high priest is still alive, but he has essentially laid the responsibilities and the burdens on me, while he relaxes and points, but it's a part of it, and it's a joyous part because he's proud and, the ancestors are proud. But then there's another factor to it, and that is the factor of the dormancy of our spiritual culture for so long that our people are now like children concerning it, where we have to be guiding them back to self in that way. So it is a big thing for me. It's a big responsibility, but it's also a massive joy. And I hope that as I proceed with this work, that more and more people will be motivated to chip in, to be a part of it, to come, because it's not just about monetary resources. It's very important, which is why we're going to start planning from now. But Jamaicans have this thing about them that if they don't see foreigners, right, or other Jamaicans who have been living as foreigners overseas, latching on and clinging to something, they don't place any stock in it. So the more people who even visit from overseas to be a part of this event, it's also a massive strength for us, because it shows that our culture is powerful enough to pull people across barriers. And one of those main barriers, of course, is even finances. Plane tickets aren't cheap. Getting a place to stay isn't cheap. So when you see people putting out that kind of effort, it's motivational for the people locally, because they're going to say, wow, this is really so important that he would take up himself and his family and everything and leave from wherever to come here. We need to look closer then. So that's what we're also trying to create, the motivation for our people here to love it more, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, back in last November, my family and I were pulled to Jamaica. We were honored and blessed and lucky enough to make it down, to set foot in Jamaica, and we traveled up, you know, up to Portland, all the way up to Boston Bay, and
Nice.
yeah, oh man, so powerful, and we, you know, you talk about sacred sites. I said, yeah, Jamaica, in my opinion, is one of the most sacred places on planet Earth. You know, every square inch of planet Earth is sacred, but there are certain places that have a certain vibration. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think here I live on one behind. You know, it's a Ross mentioned floating, and we're floating up here, and man, in Jamaica we were floating high. I mean, it's super powerful. I mean, we some places down there that just so sacred, and the water, there's something about the water down there, and it's funny, man. Like, everybody goes to Jamaica for the beach, and the beaches are amazing, and then you got these rivers, you know, and like within Jamaican culture, I feel like the rivers are very important for utilitarian purposes, spiritual, recreational, and the beaches too, and all the waters. There's a place called Blue Lagoon that I've heard you speak on, and we were graced to be there on a very rainy day. I know it can rain up in Portland, man.
Yeah, man. Rainforest.
Yeah, it's a rainforest for real. But man, energy up. So I wonder if you could speak on some of these sacred sites in Jamaica, some of these specific sites like Blue Lagoon, tradition of water within the Myal culture, and also curious if you studied or are aware much of like what they call ley lines around the earth, and if you know of any that happened through Jamaica.
I think if I'm not mistaken, because the ley line thing is not really my thing, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that the 77th parallel passes through Jamaica.
Right.
Which, if it does, indeed, it would explain the high vibration of Jamaica. So, in terms of sacred sites, I serve the Blue Lagoon as its resident priest. I have a pact with the Queen Spirit of the Blue Lagoon, and I serve her. I do cleanses there, offerings, that sort of thing. I serve the community there. It is a space that I have been a leader of marches to and advocacy to reopen the space, to keep it public, to keep it sacred, because there are entities that are trying to privatize the space. So the Blue Lagoon is very, very, very important to Jamaica's water heritage, water ecosystem, etc. It is essentially, on a physical, biological level, it is essentially a giant aquarium, a giant breeding aquarium, because so many species, very culturally important species of fish, breed, spawn right there. It is fed by 33 springs, all of which are coming from the Blue Mountains, right? So what people don't know, Blue Mountains is a dormant volcano. So this space is highly mineralized. And so the water has a lot of healing properties. It was a space anciently of pilgrimage and offering, because the spirit of the space is the queen regent of the waters of Jamaica. And so it is considered Jamaica's most sacred water space. And because it is Jamaica's most sacred water space, it happens to be the most famous water space. People like to place that on Dunn's River, but truth be told, this Blue Lagoon has been even an attraction from the 1800s, long before anybody even cared about these other spaces. And this is because Portland is the origination point of tourism in Jamaica. Most people also don't know that. And it started with United Fruit Company bringing bananas from Jamaica to the United States. Guy comes up with a wonderful idea and says, but I could bring people with me when I'm coming from the States. They can stay in the hotels that are there in Port Antonio while we are loading the banana boat, because it would take about a week or two to be full, right? And so tourists, visitors had the time, all the time in the world to go around and to see various things. And the Great Blue Hole near Port Antonio was one of those main things that they saw. The rafting on the Rio Grande also kicked in. The Rio Grande is Jamaica's largest river. And because of that, the most sacred, of course. And so the locals, our ancestors, had this technology of bringing bananas from out of the hill down to Port Antonio that we call rafting, right? So they would make the raft out of bamboo, and that's what it was for originally. It wasn't for people. It was to carry bananas, right? And so this avoided, men carrying for many more miles because there were no trucks, right? They didn't have trucks, etc. So the easiest way was to just jump on the river. And the mouth of the Rio Grande is very large, very broad. So, ships or even the canoes, the pirogues that would carry things out to the ship could easily access the bananas when they came down on the rafts. So it was all economic in the first place until it eventually became a thing of recreation. So Portland has always been a space that the world has been coming to and just been in total awe of its sacredness. The Blue Mountains, everybody knows Blue Mountain coffee is said to be the best coffee in the world. And I'm saying, how is it that Jamaica can have all this influence and people don't recognize that something is very different about Jamaica, right? Coffee isn't indigenous to Jamaica, so then how is it that we ended up with the best coffee in the world, right? So when we talk about sacred spaces, we really have to understand that these are spaces that the ancestors have always been going to, always been going with gratitude, taking care of these spirits. And this is why these places continue to draw people. The problem is that it's become very just recreational. So it's easy to ignore recreation when you want to privatize. Because you can say, oh, you can go anywhere else that you want to go. But when you say that a space is sacred as religious importance, then it changes the dynamic completely, because now you're stepping on my spirituality. And almost every country in the so-called free world has religious freedom, right? And so another part of my personal quest is getting people to remember so that these spaces can be conserved by religious freedom laws. So just as how a church is considered sacred, and you don't even hear about people saying that they're going to pull down the Roman Catholic or Anglican church to build a hotel, or that you never hear it, right? But recreational spaces is no big deal. So we need to change the perception. Another thing about sacred spaces, it is rumored that there is what's that place called? It's called Roaring River in Westmoreland, and it's a river with a subterranean cave area, water area, that a sacred cotton tree grows over. And it is said that when Bob Marley wanted his fame, etc., he went there to give offerings to the spirit of that place, right? And he pilgrimaged to that space, camped out there, right? Gave his offerings over apparently about 2 or 3 days. And when he left there, it was no turning back. So when I say Myal has given Jamaica to the world, and Myal has made the world the oyster of Jamaican people, I really mean it. Just as how the Jews claim that their thunder god, their war god Yahweh, right, gave them all of this power and dominion over the earth. Our spiritual culture has done pretty much the same, but we haven't had to enforce it with bombs, right, and threats. It has literally been enforced by just the love that people have for it, right? And that says something about our spirituality. We haven't had to use violence to coerce people to love it, right? Of course, we need to be a bit tighter in how we protect the spaces in terms of selling out to foreigners, etc. But that will come when people start to love themselves and their identity again.
Yeah, that's a good point, because man, that's the thing. It's like you go to this amazing place, and there's all these hotels or whatever. Not so much, less so in Portland for sure. Of course, down like Ocho Rios in that area, much more so. But the access really isn't there. You know what I mean, for the public. So how did it go as far as the Blue Lagoon? Because I think that was kind of held up. There were some trials going on, right, as far as the privatization.
Yeah, we're still in court.
Okay. All right.
It's a journey. We're still in court. Okay. It's definitely a journey. But it is highly improbable that a judge will really set a precedence of legal oppression of Jamaican people at this time, because we've been striving to make this such a public situation and such a topic for the world, that we are very confident that we will be victorious. I am the vice president of the association that serves the traditional workers of the Blue Lagoon, people who from their great grandparents' time, even before, have been doing rafting on the Blue Lagoon, selling traditional crafts, selling traditional food items, etc. And we are fighting because we know the importance of the space, not just the local Portlanders, but to Jamaicans, home and abroad, and the foreigners who, how do you stop someone who has come to your space and is so respectful of it and so able to express to you how this place has elevated them. This is how we should want foreigners to feel. We should want them to feel the sacredness of the space. And in so feeling the sacredness of the space, they should then understand, I shouldn't want to take this from the local people just because I have the money to coerce the government to do things my way. What if I invested and partnered with the local people? Then I could still have the benefit of it, even passing to my children's children's children, if I only just form a good relationship with the people of the land. That's the dynamic that we want to create. We're not suggesting that foreigners be shut out. What we're suggesting is that we as the people of the land have a say and have the opportunity to forge partnerships with these foreigners that are so interested, so invested in love for our land.
Yeah. We were down in Ocho Rios area and with some family down there, big up K Genius, and they were telling us that the one local beach that's still there is being closed off. It's privatized. And just a few years before that, there was a place just, I want to say in the Portland area or towards Portland from Ocho Rios close. I think it was called Reggae Beach. And someone bought that up, and it's miles. They closed it off. There's huge fences.
Huge fence.
And I'm like, man, this is crazy.
I used to visit Reggae Beach as a child.
Okay. Yeah. My brethren used to work at that beach.
Yeah. I remember when it was free entry.
Yeah. Now it's closed off completely.
Closed. I haven't seen inside of that beach for maybe over 10 years. I don't know what it looks like anymore down there or anything like that.
Yeah. Wow. And one more thing I want to mention before I let Rossi, come in with some questions, I'm sure. But I did check that 77 longitude that you mentioned, and you're right. Jamaica is right on it. And guess where else is on it? Peru.
Yeah.
Peru.
Really?
Yeah. It goes right from Jamaica straight down to Peru. And when it goes north into North America, it hits Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C., Jamaica, Peru. That's the line. Yeah, you were right on about that, man.
And it passes through, when it passes through Jamaica on the north coast, it passes through the district that my mother is from, which is Rio Nuevo, which incidentally is the spot that the British first invaded Jamaica. It's about 10 minutes of drive from Ocho Rios, right?
Okay.
So you have to pass through it on your way to Portland from Ocho Rios. It's a must. It cannot be avoided.
Okay.
And that is where we will be building our sacred sanctuary and temple grounds. We've started already, but financial resources have caused the project to have been halted for about 3 years now. COVID really did a number on us. But we know that we're recovering. We know that we'll recover soon. But we know the power of that space, and we know that we do sit on a line of power. But because it's not really my focus, I don't claim to be an expert on the geography and all of that.
Sure.
On the level of maps and that sort of thing. But I'm glad that you were able to confirm it.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. The aspect of Washington, D.C. and Peru, though, is really interesting.
Yeah, I know. I was like, what, man? And I'm telling you, man, having, because we go to, my mother-in-law's up here from Peru right now. And like I said, my wife is from there. So we go there about every year. And that's another one of those places, the energy. I mean, you go into those mountain sites, Machu Picchu and all that. And it's,
I
you
badly
know,
want to go, believe me.
yeah,
Badly want to go.
and
Yeah.
the reverence of water, like how it is in Jamaica with places like the Blue Lagoon and many other sites, all the rivers. You know, you see that a similar reverence, you know, within the indigenous people of
Yes.
Peru. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. Rossi, man, I want to just, you know, pass the mic over to you for a minute, brethren, and let you have a chance.
Yes,
I mean,
because I will leave a disclaimer. I have been at it for the past 2 weeks preparing for the ceremony, and I still haven't. So I will probably have to depart soon because I'm tired.
Of
But
course,
please,
brethren.
Russ. Yeah, we can do a part two. But please, Russ, go ahead with any questions that you have.
Yeah, I think you summed it all up with the connection, with the Jamaican and Cuban connection, which I wish in part two we can get more into, them being on the
Sure.
Bermuda Triangle, that connection with Puerto Rico also, and then the Peruvian connection. I think enough is said. I think that's a lot to chew on right there. How the naturally mystic of the number 77, you 34 years old. You know, they told you to walk in that position, you know, with no fear, and it's rightfully, you know, you rightfully done that, you earned it, and I think it's a beautiful natural flow. I think we should end on that and meet back again on part two. It's a lot more to cover. Well, man, this is what I'm talking about,
Good.
that natural flow, you know.
Yeah, man, sounds good, sounds good. But as a tidbit concerning the Cuban connection, since you mentioned it first, under the same obeah act that we were discussing, one of the punishments for practicing obeah was transportation, as they called it, transportation off of the island. And one of the main destinations for those who were transported off the island was Cuba, right? So there are Palomayombe lineages, excuse me, that have direct connections to Jamaica and that were directly influenced by Myal, Jamaican Myal culture. And there is a very good brother priest that I connect with who I think his mother is Cuban and his father is Jamaican. So because he's a Palero, he had known from his high priest that there is a direct connection between Jamaica and Cuba spiritually through Palomayombe. And so he had been searching for it for the longest while until one day he heard me speaking and he's like, no, man, I have to connect with him. So connecting in that way, and this is one thing I love about technology. And you know, even this gathering here shows us that as dark-skinned indigenous people, we shouldn't be afraid to embrace technology, and the way that it opens up the world to us. The sharing of ideas is so important, and that's why I really took the time out to do this evening, as tired as I am, because Dee has been really reaching out to me for a long time, and I really didn't want the brother to think that I was avoiding him, not wanting to do it. My hands have been full, but I said, look, if I put him off another day, because my wife said to me, well, you're tired, Alex, are you sure? I said, if I put this brother off another day, it's not going to work out. So let me just nip it in the bud and sit down with them now, because I don't know what it will bring, right? And so, because I know that spirits are working in the background, I say, look, any opportunity that comes to me that is respectful of my culture, respectful of me as a person, as an individual, as a priest, and you know that I can really sit down and think about progress with, I'm going to do it, because I don't know who will hear this. I don't know what even you guys are capable of. So I don't reject friendship of any kind. I don't reject any positive connection. And respectfully, I have to say thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the connection. I really appreciate the enthusiasm for our culture, and I really look forward to going deeper in a part 2 and whatever other positive works that we can do together.
Yes, brethren. Yes. Yeah. Well, we give thanks, man. Go ahead, Ross.
No, I'm good. Give thanks.
Yeah, give thanks. Yeah, and I knew that you had been busy, Alex. So I wanted to make sure you had the time to have some time to unwind and soak it in. You know, it sounds like it's a big moment. So congratulations too, brethren. That's a big that's a big honor, high honor. Yeah.
Give thanks.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
So yeah, brethren, get some rest, man, and honors to the wife and to the family,
Sure.
and the high priest, and
Sure.
the whole family of Jamaica. Big up.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Big up to you, bro.
All right, yeah. Give thanks, Alex. Yeah, we look forward to part 2, but we'll do it when the time is right. And yes, man, we could be on all night, but let's end it right here.
Easily.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Blessings, my brother. Thanks
Blessings.
again for the opportunity.
Yes, all right, give thanks, brother.
Yeah.
Peace, brothers. Peace and love.
Yes, I.
Yeah, peace and
love.